I think I can safely say that, considering the stakes, the 7th game against Atlanta in 1988 was one of the greatest games ever played in the history of the league.
Bird was having an okay game up until the 4th quarter. Kevin Willis came over and said, "Nick, don't let him score tonight." And Bird standing next to him. I'm looking at Kevin like, "What are you doing?" You know, his Bird's eyes got like this big.
Bird gets it in low on the turnaround. Bird is up with it. Bird, Lucas is there. Bird comes free. Bird for the layup.
That's what Larry Bird himself said about Game 7 against Atlanta in 1988, and Bird didn't throw around compliments lightly. But what made this game legendary? It wasn't just the stakes. It wasn't just the Celtics' legacy on the line. It was Larry Bird versus a cocky instigator.
I feel I can stop Kevin McHale. He's tough, but you got to know how to play him.
See, the Hawks were red hot that day. They had momentum, they had swagger, and they had Kevin Willis. But then he made a huge mistake. Willis poked the bear. And what happens when you poke Larry Bird? You get the 4th quarter ride of your life. By the time the final buzzer sounded, Willis was left with one brutal reality check. Let's talk about that day. I know what you're thinking. Kevin who? Trust me, you're not alone. Kevin Willis isn't exactly a household name today, but don't let that fool you. Drafted by the Atlanta Hawks in 1984, Willis had one of those quiet but legendary careers. Over 16,000 career points, 11,000 rebounds. And here's the kicker. He played more NBA games than any player not in the Hall of Fame. That's wild, right? Back in the late 80s, Kevin Willis wasn't known for his longevity. He was known for being a physical enforcer. The guy who didn't mind mixing it up in the paint. And at the time, the Hawks weren't some bottom-tier team. Led by Dominic Wilkins, they were young, fearless, and on the rise. Meanwhile, the Celtics, they were on the other end of the story. A battle-tested dynasty trying to squeeze out another run before time caught up with them. So when the Celtics and Hawks faced off in the Eastern Conference semifinals, it was youth versus experience, fire versus tradition. The Celtics came out swinging. They won the first 2 games and took control of the series. Kevin Willis was in his usual form. With just over 3 minutes left in the game, Willis delivered a nasty face rake to Kevin McHale. You can guess how that went down. And just like that, the series went from a competitive battle to personal. But here's the thing. The Hawks didn't back down. Far from it.
They're not in the game. Get in the game now.
Rivers looked left for Wilkins, gave the no look.
Atlanta came roaring back, winning the next 3 straight. Suddenly, the Celtics, with their dynasty on the line, were on the ropes. One more Hawks win, and Larry Bird's Celtics were out.
You know, they for sure had the respect of us. Kevin Willis was a good player, and Dominique and Doc Rivers and Spud Webb came off their bench. They were a deep team that could score the ball, and if we weren't at our best, we were in trouble.
Game 6 in Atlanta was the Hawks' moment. They had the chance to end it all, knock out a dynasty, cement themselves in history, and they almost did. But they blew it.
And we blew our opportunity with the Celtics in Game 6. We should have won that series in 6 games. Tough shot at the end of the game that got the win for them.
The last play in Game 6 was, Dominique and I were the 2 guys that score. I called a timeout because they knew what we were running. We called another one, and I inbounded the ball to Cliff Livingston, and he was supposed to dribble handoff to either me or Dominique. DJ read it, and he top-sided me. Cliff looked at Dominique, and then Cliff went on his own and shot it. Cliff's right-handed. He shot a left-handed hook shot.
Boston has won the game.
And Bird, at the end of that game, made a bold prediction to the press that, Atlanta blew their opportunity. I'm guaranteeing a win in Boston.
They had a big chance to beat us. I think now that we're going to come out and play like we did tonight, but we're going to be at home, and our shots are going to be dropping a little bit better, and we're going to be running a little bit faster. So I'd say Sunday's going to be a big win for the Celtics.
Game 6, gone. And now, all roads led to Game 7 in the Boston Garden. Larry Bird had guaranteed a win, and trust me, the city took it personally. The Celtics were fighting for more than just a playoff spot. They were defending their legacy. And the fans? Oh, they were ready.
There was no private flights back then. So I remember landing in Boston. I don't know, it was late, Scal, and I remember this old lady at the airport. And I'm not exaggerating. She may have been 80. Had her little purse, and she walks up to me. "Hey, Rivers, you thought you wasn't coming back, didn't you?" I will never forget that. I wish I knew who that lady was.
He never forgot that moment because that's Boston. Now, Bird wasn't just talking. He was preparing for a war, and so was Dominic Wilkins.
So we come out of the locker room in Boston. So I stopped in the hallway. I said, "Look, we're going to win this goddamn game." I said, "If you ain't ready to fight, you ain't ready to go to war, don't come out here." I said, "Whoever guard me, I ain't going to have a long fucking night." Unfortunately, he was telling his teammates the same thing down the other end.
And what happened next? Well, it wasn't just a game. It was a showdown. Bird versus Wilkins. A can you top this clinic of offensive basketball? Shot for shot, possession for possession, neither of them backing down. But for the first 3 quarters, Bird struggled to keep up with Wilkins. Dominic was on fire, and the Hawks' game plan was simple. Find Dominic, feed Dominic.
And let me tell you something. There was a 3-on-1 or whatever. Dominic, down that last 4 minutes, I was getting the ball to Dominic Wilkins. Like, I knew exactly what was going on. I've been around Nick enough to know when he was on fire. And when Nick's on fire, people will never give Nick he was one of the greatest offensive players to ever play our game. He scored in so many ways and was literally unguardable.
But then you needed wings to play in this game, because what started as a gritty physical matchup turned into an airborne duel between Larry Bird and Dominic Wilkins. The fourth quarter, it was basketball theater. 2 legends going bucket for bucket, but none of this would have happened if one guy hadn't poked the bear. And yeah, we're looking at you, Kevin Willis. See, Dominic Wilkins knew what was coming the second it happened.
And I remember he only had 12 points going in the fourth quarter. And it was Kevin Willis, it was me and Larry. We run down the court, and Kevin reached across me, put his hands, and Bird said, "Don't let this so-and-so score anymore tonight." I'm like, "What you doing?" You don't wake up a sleeping giant. And his eyes got that big, man. I remember they took me out for a blow, and Cliff Livingston came in the game, and he got hot. And the coach said, "Nick, go out there, stop him." I'm like, "Stop him? He hot now. You forget that." That's the only thing I can do is try to match him bucket for bucket. And it was a shootout in the fourth quarter. It came down to the last shot. The game was pretty close, and I went out for a blow in the third quarter. Larry only had 12 points in the third quarter. And I remember Kevin Willis reaching across me and pointing at Larry, but he said, "Don't let this somebody score anymore tonight." I'm like, "What are you doing? Don't awake a sleeping giant." Well, he ended up with 34 that night. He had 20 in the fourth quarter. We had that famous shootout between us at the end of that fourth quarter. And to this day, I'd be mad. I'm mad at Kevin. I said, "Kevin, man, why you just didn't sit? Don't say it. Leave him alone."
Kevin Willis, we would come down the court in the third quarter, and he reached over in Bird's chest, said, "Don't let this so-and-so score no more tonight." And I looked at Kevin, I'm like, "What the hell are you doing? You don't want to awaken a sleeping giant. He got 12 points. Don't wake him up." And I remember sitting down before the fourth quarter, and I'm watching the game, and he gets hot. And I remember Coach said, "All right, Nick, go in there and slow him down." I said, "Slow him down? He's hot now. Ain't nothing I can do." Only thing I can do is match him bucket for bucket. And that's what turned out one of the greatest fourth quarters ever.
Larry Bird walked into the fourth quarter with 12 points. And by the time the game ended, he had 34. But it wasn't just how much he scored. It was how he did it. In that final frame, Bird went 9 of 10 from the field and dropped 20 points. left-handed hooks, turnaround fadeaways, pull-up jumpers in transition. Bird was pulling moves from his entire bag. Dominic? He couldn't believe what he was seeing.
Man, he was doing a little bit of everything. I don't know really what he was doing in that fourth quarter, but the stuff that he was doing, it was unbelievable, man. I mean, he was throwing left-hand shots, running hooks. His game was at another level. We was trying to match each other's will, and so it was just a game who was going to hit first.
Johnson gets it into Bird, and Wilkins is there. Bird comes free. Bird for the layup.
The fourth quarter wasn't just Bird versus Wilkins. It was a back-and-forth shootout for the ages. In the first 7.5 minutes of the quarter, the Celtics had the ball 13 times and scored on 10 possessions. The Hawks, on the other hand, scored on 11 of 12. The score was tied 9 times. Neither team could create separation. And Boston's strategy? Simple.
Larry was hot and he was feeling it. And so it was just, get the ball to Larry and let him make the read, because if they come double, he's going to make the right play.
Bird's will broke Atlanta. Boston pulled out a 118-116 win, completing one of the greatest comebacks in playoff history. Game, series, legacy intact. And that's the day Larry Bird showed a cocky instigator who's boss. Kevin Willis poked the bear, and Bird responded by delivering one of the greatest fourth quarter performances in NBA history. It wasn't just a game, it was a statement. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's this. When Larry Bird takes something personally, there's no stopping him. And if you want more legendary Larry Bird stories, you don't have to go far. Click play on this next video. NBA legends share the first time they faced Larry Bird. Trust me, those stories, they're just as crazy.